Welcome everyone to our webinar. Um, this is the Center for Water Policy, and I'm Melissa Scanlon, the director of the center. And today's webinar is part of a series that we host through the Freshwater Collaborative of Wisconsin's Water Policy Network that we manage here through the center. And we try to bring together researchers from across the UW system who are focused on water policy to build a community of practice. And so through this community, we try to host webinars on research that highlight the various research approaches that we're bringing to these questions of water policy. And we cover a lot of different disciplines, not just an analysis of regulations. And as we'll see in today's presentation, there'll be some hopefully new methods that people get exposed to. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anna Watson, who is coordinating the network this year. And Anna, do you want to introduce our speaker?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Anna Watson. As Melissa mentioned, I'm a science policy fellow and water policy specialist here at the Center for Water Policy. And as part of my role, I get to coordinate the Freshwater Collaborative's Water Policy Network. And I'm excited to introduce our speaker today, Hadi Veisi. Hadi is an assistant professor in the Environment and Society Department at UW-Stevens Point. And prior to becoming a faculty member there, he earned his PhD in agricultural extension and education from Tehran University. And his research interests include sustainability and ESG reporting, environmental governance and policy, and community-based participatory research. And so Hadi is here today to speak a little bit about on his research on scenario development and investigation of the effects of deglobalization on food, energy, and water systems. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to our speaker.
Okay, thank you, Anna, and appreciate for having me today. First, I want to start with a little kind of introduction and a little background. As I want to say, we no longer living in a world just one crisis arrive one at a time. We living in a world recently, people practitioner in Davos and also more scholar, they call it polycrisis, where the crises intersect and reinforce one another and cascade across the system. And in the way that our policy were not designed to handle it so far. This is why we see the trade policy shift, we see climate stress, energy insecurity, and food price volatility and water risk. These are not no longer, it's just the isolated issue. They are all related together, and treating them as a related issue, it will be is increasingly be costly and also more costly ecologically, politically, and economically. This is why we, in this talk today, I want to offer a system-based approach to think through the water, food, energy system, one that's set at the intersection of a new trade policy and sustainability. And that way, it help kind of decision maker navigating the polycrisis, not just to react to it. As Anna said, I'm Hadi Veisi from University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, and my work focus on translating the sustainability science into policy-relevant insight for regional level, and in this case, about the Great Lake region. Let's, and here, this slide show where we want to going in this webinar. First, I am talking a little bit about the background, about where this project come from. And then we move to the method. And after that, I explain the result, and I'll close my presentation and webinar today with some conclusion about our research. Okay, what we are seeing today, it is not just changing in the policy, in the trade, it is the policy, but it is a structural change in political environment toward protectionism, deglobalization, regionalization, and trade war right now, you will see. These, as I said, in the poly-crisis context, these are not just political label. And actually, they reshape how good capital and even for capital, all of them move across the border, and all of them they have a direct consequence for water, food, energy system. This is why when we have a tariff in one place, we will see reshape the crop market elsewhere, and also when we have a kind of any disruption in energy system, they led to draw out like a fertilizer cost. This is where this is why we see that all of them they have a kind of related together. This is why if we take polycrisis seriously, we need a new method to capture all of this complexity. This is why in this research, we are using a participatory tool and participatory approach to help us to see how political decisions translate into biophysical pressure. But where this project come from? This project is a part of a big, large project, NSF-funded project with the title "The Impact of Deglobalization and Regional Dynamic of a Food, Energy, and Water System in Great Lake." The core idea in this research is that the trade policy doesn't stay in trade. It actually reshape sustainability priority. This is why we translated global scenario like SSP into regional choices for Great Lake in our research. But why Great Lake? Because Great Lake, we know more than 20% of fresh water globally is in the Great Lake. And also we know 7% of the crop production is in a Great Lake, and Great Lake is one of the main corridor for energy in North America. Yeah, and also if we consider Great Lake was a one unit, it will be now ranked 3 in terms of economically around the world. Despite this strategic position the Great Lake they has, still more decision in Great Lake they shape and made at the locally and regionally. And this tension in terms of in this tension between the global pressure and also decision in the local level, that's exactly what we want to unpack in our research. But before going further, I want to just explain some jargon and some of the key concepts in our research. The first one, it's the deglobalization. What's the deglobalization? When you're talking about the deglobalization, it's a kind of structural change, slowdown, and reversal and reconfiguration of a global economic integration. Deglobalization, it is not about stopping the trade, but it is about how trade happen and where that trade happen. Another concept we have, it's a model. When we're talking a model, it's a representation of a reality and helping us to understand how a system works and why outcome occur. This is why the model, it is not about the prediction of the future, and actually it's about revealing the causal relationship. But what's scenario? Because we talk a lot about the scenario. Scenario, it's a structural story about the plausible future. Scenario allow us to explore uncertainty and examine how different assumptions about the trade and sustainability in our research today led to different outcomes. These core concept and key concept here, they form foundation for how we analyze complex and interconnected system in our research today. Here, I want to talk about the scenario and the model we had in our research. As you can see, the scenario is the kind of starting point and serve as a base to create the assumption, create assumption about the political situation, sustainability, priority, and economic situation. Then we feed that assumption in the global and national market model, which influence regional economic dynamic in Great Lake region. At the same time, regional climate model and farmer decision impact the land use and allocation and land use choices, which all of them they impact ecosystem and also hydrological process, which led to the water quality indicator and also other and carbon emission in our cases. But the key key insight is here. It's about a feedback loop, because any signal, economic signal, they impact the decision about the land use and also about the environmental outcome. And the environmental outcome, and actually they provide the feedback to economic situation and also sustainability assessment. And that's how we try to capture all complexity in water, food, energy system in Great Lake in our research. Okay, and after, right now we set the stage and we know about where does research come from. Right now, I want to talk about the method and how we try to capture all of this complexity and what kind of method we use and what's behind this. For in terms of our method, rather than just developing scenario by researcher, we use a participatory approach to bring directly our stakeholder into the process. As you can see, but what's the participatory scenario development and scenario model? What's this? When we are talking about this participatory scenario, we're talking about the structural space for dialogue between stakeholder and also researcher to co-construct scenario together, possible future. As you can see here, the stakeholder in this process bring the concrete and knowledge and place-based knowledge. That's what the stakeholder bring. It is a modeling and abstraction knowledge. They're helping us to develop a different type of alternative. And both of them together, that's what they provide for us, the basic to kind of having both reality and also having like cutting edge knowledge. Okay, by the stakeholder, we talk a lot about stakeholder in participatory approach. In our research, we had two types of a stakeholder. The first one, we said PMAT. It means our research team that's compound of made of 20 scientists across Ohio State University. And also, we had a regional advisory committee that we called it RAC member that composed of a stakeholder and also regional governance representative. Together, all of them, they help us to bridge the science, policy, and practice. And also, they're helping us also, that help us to provide ongoing input rather than just one-time feedback. But what is the rule? Stakeholder in our research was not just advisor. They were actually active co-producer in our research. And they're helping us to, I'll explain this later, to draft, to design the first draft of our scenario, and also review the model assumption, and more importantly, helping us to evaluate our result in terms of a credibility, validity is the valid and also useful for decision making. Okay, in our research, we use a different type of data, multiple data. We rely on a different type of data, including the meeting note, as you see, transcript from our meeting, and also interview and a lot of data from data set. In terms of reliability, we address reliability in our research through triangulation by comparing the insight and information across different documents to be sure none of these documents, the sources, dominate our narrative during the research, and our results are credible. And here is the roadmap for our research. You'll see our research start from as early 2018 to early 2023. The first part, we started with planning and also team alignment. This is where we have our team and also team alignment. Then after that, we started, then after we moved to kind of data collection and also discussion section, stakeholder discussion. And after that part, we just moved to a core of our research. Actually, it was an iterative process of a modeling during this process. As you can see here, during that time, we had COVID. This is why at that time, some of our meetings, they just turned to be a virtual, but the participatory approach, participatory model and participatory approach we had still continue. At the end of the early of 2023, we move to the next step, it will be synthesis and also outreach. Then we translate our result to publication, and also some tool for high school education about the nexus in Great Lake, and other like outreach activity like workshop for different type of a stakeholder. This is our roadmap for our research. Okay, see what was the result of this kind of our within all of this process we did. And today I want to share with you the rest of presentation. Here, as I said, I want to explain our result. The first part of our result is about how we develop our scenario, because how we develop scenario actually is more important. It is as important as the result. This is why it's important how to know how we develop the scenario. In our research, with the participation from both RAC team and PMAT, it means scientists and stakeholder together, we develop a scenario across two axes and two key concepts for our research. Is one, sustainability priority and protection, and also trade, the trade situation. This is why you'll see we have two axes and a different range of a sustainability priority and also trade openness. And the business as usual is the current situation. As a result, we gather four scenarios. The first scenario, it was a strong sustainability projection and lower trade, as you can see. The second one, lower trade and also lower sustainability. And third one, it was a strong sustainability protection and also higher trade. And the fourth scenario, it was a higher trade and a lower sustainability. Okay, right now, and you'll see all of this together, they create the pathway in the future that developed by our stakeholder and align with their expectation. But we are not stopped here just like an abstract kind of concept and scenario. Then to bring the life to this kind of scenario, we ask them to provide some policy bundle for each of these scenarios. And you can see here this policy bundle regarding the energy, land use, water quality, and environment. You'll see in the sustainability part, we have a stronger renewable energy standard, we have a tighter land and water regulation, and also more aggressive carbon pricing policy. But at the same time, in the lower sustainability, you have a more dominant of a fossil fuel and more expensive renewable energy. In the trade, high trade, we have a more global integration, and the low trade, we have a more regionalization and self-sufficiency. And based on I just want you kind of remember this policy bundle because we want to do something with it later. And that's how we bring the life to our scenario developed by our stakeholder. But right now, what we had, it was a kind of the original scenario we developed together. But we needed to try to link to the global scenario around the world. This is why we look at the different type of a scenario, and we come up with the shared socioeconomic pathway, so-called SSP. But what's the SSP? When we are talking about the SSP is the story about how war evolved under different situations, different economic, ecological, and social situation, which has implication for water, food, energy system. And each of these pathway and the story difference in terms of population growth, economic development, and technological adoption, and inequality, and also global cooperation. And you will see here that this scenario developed across for climate change and across to challenge for adaptation and challenge for mitigation. This is why we have a 5 scenario. The first scenario is a sustainability lens, in which it is a more positive about sustainability. Second one is the middle of the road, the current situation moving forward. And then in SSP3, we have a rocky road in more regionalization and also fragmentation. And SSP4, it is more about the inequality. And SSP5, it's more about using the fossil fuel. The next step, we try to make a link between our scenario grid that we developed with the SSP. This is why the main question we ask, which of SSP most closely resemble one of the scenario we have developed by our stakeholder and our team. And as a result, as you can see here, we saw SSP1 with the lens of sustainability is more aligned with strong environmental sustainability, and SSP2 kind of in the middle of the road, and it's a business as usual. And SSP5, it's a more fossil fuel growth driven, and SSP3 is about more fragmentation, regionalization, and SSP4 is more about the inequality, just aligned with the strong sustainability and lower trade. This is how we try to make it kind of bring the structural framework globally into our framework, our scenario that we had in our research. And this is what I was saying here, the SSP, it was like a reference framework for us in this research. But after that, we tried to bring that policy bundle we developed at the beginning to to SSP scenario. As you can see here, if you look at the color, I just want you to look at the color, you will see more, we have a more alliance about the SSP3. It means when we have a fragmentation, which we have a lower openness and lower trade and also lower sustainability. That more alignment we'll see in the SSP3, we have a more alignment between these two type of a scenario in terms of a policy bundle. But when we come to SSP5, we will see the policy bundle, they kind of scatter in a different type of a scenario. And this is where we have a big gap. And like a mismatch in our research. And as I said, that gap, they show there's a between optimistic global growth assumption and underground political and resource constraint we have. But okay, right now we got that kind of scenario, and that's like a mismatch and alignment. But that's the question is, okay, we want to embed the kind of regional dynamic what we have in a Great Lake to our SSP, because SSP is global, and we need to have, for that we need to downscale. For downscaling, we use one framework, factor, actor, sector framework for bringing that dynamic to the global framework. As you can see here at the top, we have a different type of a scenario, and at the left, we have a different factor, globalization, or we can say trade and population, technological change and conservation, and GDP. And in our research, we ask main question from our stakeholder to assess the direction of a change for each of these factors. See, okay, in each of different of this scenario, it's about the direction of a change, and see if we have an increased change, we have a decreased change, or we have a no change. This is why we came up with this result. As you can see here, in higher sustainability trade and higher trade, we have an increase in technology change and also conservation in a land use. And more importantly, we will see also we have some increase in terms of equality. In terms of a lower sustainability and lower trade, we have for conservation decrease. And also inequality increase, and about the lower sustainability and higher trade, you will see we have a more GDP, more economic gain. But in terms of agriculture and land use, we see almost no change and maybe decrease. This is how we bring this kind of dynamic from the local level to like a global framework we have. But the next step, we try looking at this direction, using this direction for coming up in a global model to coming up with some measurable trend related to water, food, energy system in our system. Here, I want to start with population as one big driver in a water, food, energy system. As you can see here, in terms of population, most of the perspective we got from our stakeholder is actually aligned with the result in the global trend. You'll see in the high trade and low sustainability, you have a moderate increase. They say moderate increase by our RAC team. This means they show the increase. And also in high trade and high sustainability, you will see still, they said no change and more increase, and still we'll see it's completely aligned with that. And in a low trade and a low sustainability, they said no change, but you'll see we have a decrease. But we see we have some kind of more alignment with what our stakeholders said and what the trend in the global level they show us. Another trend I want to talk about is adoption of a best management BMP across the Great Lakes. The data we just gathered, we just put in conversation with the global level. As you can see, in a high sustainability scenario, we have a big uptake. It means when we have a sustainability in place, then we have a more adoption, and they can lead to a more adoption by farmers and implementing it. But in the business as usual, we have a little slower adoption. But when we have a lower sustainability, is completely lag behind this kind of adoption. And they show us how important it is, the kind of policy and also institutional support as technology. It means if we have a technology, also we need this kind of policy support. And here, it's just another trend we had for two staple crop in Midwest, crop and soybean. And as you can see, in most of the case, we, particularly in the high sustainability and high trade, we will see still we have that kind of increase in the trend. It means the productivity going up, and we have a more production. That shows sustainability actually doesn't decrease any kind of productivity, but they help to productivity in over time be more stable. How about the water quality? In the water quality, we use nutrient loading as an indicator for water quality. Here we'll see completely different type of divergent among the different type of scenario. As you can see, when we have a high sustainability and high trade, actually we'll see the nutrient load, it decreased substantially. But we'll see in a low trade and low sustainability, and they just get increased substantially and significantly. This is why we'll say when we have a policy, they put a priority on a sustainability, they have a big impact on water quality, because that's coming from using the BMP in our land decision making. This is why they kind of reinforce each other. But about the energy, the story is a little complicated, because it's not just about the consumption, also it's about the production and also exploitation of energy. But for energy, we didn't reinvent the wheel, and this is why we use information just actually published by Department of Energy of the United States in our research. And what we did, we just bring the logic of SSP to that predictions. This is why here we can see we just provide one result for you here. It's about the adoption wind and increasing wind and solar. And as you can see in the high sustainability, scenario, we have increased. In other scenario, when we have a low sustainability, we will see we have not significantly kind of decreased the adoption of that. Still here we can see how important it is, the policy and also institutional support for and also along with the technology. Here it will be a wind and solar. Okay, this is our result right now, and I want to right now to wrap up my presentation by talking about some key conclusion we had in our research. The first thing I want to talk about, what we saw, the trade shaped the scale and speed of change, but sustainability determined the direction. That's an important point, and we should consider when we have a sustainability policy in place, then we have a direction. But as I said, they help us to see the quality of that direction and quality of the scale of a speed. In high sustainability future, tend to deliver better water quality, as we saw, and stronger conservation adoption, and more resilient agriculture and cleaner energy system, even when the trade remain high. But with low sustainability future, we saw create a compounding pressure across the water, food, energy system, regardless the trade openness. Another key conclusion, it was actually what make our work so powerful. It was an iterative process between a stakeholder and between researcher, because it's helping us to ground our scenario in reality. And also the research team helping us to connect this reality to global pathway and data. And as a result, our scenario not only was scientifically robust, but also socially grounded in reality and actionable. In this slide, I want to show you the big tension we always have when we want to do like a scenario development. If you will see here, particularly in a participatory scenario development, because I want to, after that, talk about the challenges we had. Because as you can see, the stakeholder bring the reality and real knowledge and place-based knowledge to our research. But there is a big risk with that. It is a kind of trap and a status quo kind of bias, and shorter kind of perspective, short term perspective. But when we come to the researcher, the issue is maybe they bring the modeling and bring the data to our research and different type of alternative. But there is another bias here. It's a disconnected from the reality. And here in the middle of that, that's how scenario try to put all of them together. In our research, as you can see here, at the beginning, we have a big data. We have a large role in more data from our stakeholder. But when the project are moving forward, we will see more contribution from researcher and their data and their model. And this is where the uptake happen, and make grounded our model and scenario and reality, and also in the global structural framework we have. This is why it is important to know managing this and participate in the participatory way, and also more importantly, the iterative process we have in this participatory scenario development. But like any other researcher, our research also, we face a lot of challenges during our project. And I'm sorry, it seems okay. It seems here. Well, I want to talk about the two types of challenge. The first challenge we had, it was a technical challenge, and another challenge, it was actually a stakeholder engagement challenge and relational challenge we had. In terms of a technical challenge, as you saw, we have a lot of misalignment, mismatch between the scenario we had and also the global scenario. The reason for that, because the global scenario developed based on a climate change adoption and mitigation, but our scenario developed based on sustainability and trade. And for this kind of handling this situation, we try to kind of having a different type of a workshop together, and also rescaling our model and our scenario with that. And also in terms of a stakeholder engagement challenge we had, since they came with a different background in terms of their major and also their understanding about the participatory approach and about the model. This is why we have a lot of tension. And the way we did, we try at the beginning of the project, try to clarify the role everyone and the boundary, and which factor it's a kind of internal factor and which factor it's an external factor. This is how we try to handle all of this kind of tension during our research for participatory development of our scenario. And at the end, I want to say in this research, as I said, it was a kind of result of a big team, more than 20 scientists across the Ohio State University. And the credit this work also go to Dr. Douglas Jackson Smith and also Dr. Blakey, because both of them are co-PI for participatory scenario development in this research, and I collaborate with them during this research. In case if anyone wanted to know more about this project, they get more information inside about this project, they can go to this QR code on this address, and you can find a bunch of like a video and other material, and also the paper published about this research. Oh, sorry, it seems here challenges here. Oh, thank you so much for your attention, and I'm happy to take any question, particularly about the process and about the scenario and how this process can be applied in a different other places. I see what I was on time.
Yes, great. Thank you, Hadi. If anyone has any questions, feel free to jump in. Otherwise, I can pose one.
I have a question.
Yes.
It looked like you had a slide that showed your publication that you didn't put up. So maybe just you could put that up briefly.
Yes, that's a publication we had at the beginning of the research. We asked people about their expectation about the participatory modeling, and we saw a lot of like a difference between what the stakeholder think about the like a participatory modeling and researcher talking about the participatory modeling. And this helped us to see, okay, what's the gap? And at that way, then when we clarify, we have like a meeting with them, and they're helping us to learn about, okay, that's a little different from what we did so far.
Great. Nice to see. Thank you for the talk. This was really interesting. And
Thank you.
yeah, it's on a very different research approach than we've had before. So I think it adds to the variety of research methods that we've been able to feature here through this series. So one of the questions I had at the outset was, how did you identify the participants? And why did they spend time on this project?
That's a great question. Actually, we had like a big pool for having people to participate in our research, and more than maybe 100% we just communicate with them. But about I think 35% from a different institute, non-governmental institute, and also private sector and governmental sector, they just respond to us, and they ask, kind of accept to participate in our work. And it seems it was interesting for them because it was related to what they are doing.
Thanks.
Sure.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Great. Thank you so much. That was super interesting. It's always great to see other kind of scenario development processes. I've been a part of two scenario projects over the last 13 years or so. The first one was in kind of the Madison area lakes, looking out to the year 2070. And then we're just wrapping up another one looking at the Upper Mississippi River Basin. And it's also an Infuse funded project. So this is super cool to hear about and kind of share notes and methods. And I'd love to follow up more. But I guess just the first question that popped in my mind is related to kind of what you originally proposed in terms of that kind of two-dimensional axis.
Yes.
Of kind of sustainability on the vertical and like trade on the x-axis. And how did people react, I guess, to those being your kind of primary axes of change or like variability, I guess, in the future? Because I guess just personally, I'm trying to think specifically about how trade kind of ripples into the system of the Great Lakes Basin and impacts like land use. And I guess I don't see it as big of a driver of maybe some other things like, just how corn and soybeans are processed into different products, for instance, like whether or not in 50 years we'll be producing as much corn ethanol, for instance. So I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more about how the idea of trade is like a key axis of your investigation.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I went back to that time, the context we had at the first Trump administration, and when we have a trade war, and after that, when we had the COVID, and also the situation get more crazier at that
Right,
time. And
right,
this is why we had a lots of issue. And actually, we published another paper about how people at that time kind of react to the trade tension, and particularly farmers. And I saw that kind of the ripple effect when we have the tension in a trade, and the people they couldn't find a new market for that. This is why a lot of people they diversify their farms, and they made a different land use decision about what they want to just plant in their land. And that's what we saw. And we got this kind of policy band, that part of a policy bundle actually related to the land use and how they impact farmers to looking for another market and looking for another crop. And and we saw, as I said, particularly right now in the poly crisis, we see all of the stuff, they kind of have a ripple effect on each other. And it is not just one is isolated stuff. This is why we thought, okay, maybe we need kind of looking at the different other factor like a population even. This is why you will see you have a lot of kind of not just technology, the other factor that drive the change.
great. Thanks for that. Can I just, as a quick follow up? So just, I guess, to clarify, when you say that you had some evidence of farmers making different decisions, whether or not an international demand
Yes.
was shifting. I guess what was that evidence? Because I guess I haven't seen
Oh, okay.
that. Like I feel like the corn and soybean acreage in the Great Lakes Basin has probably not changed a ton over the last 10 years. I haven't looked specifically at the Great Lakes Basin. I know in the upper Mississippi, it hasn't shifted all that much. So I'm wondering, like, what's the basis of kind of that change in decision making connected to, I guess, trade impacts?
Yeah, thank you for that question. That's one for this part of the question. We have a questionnaire from the farmers, and across I think what I remember, it was in Ohio and Illinois. That's what we asked the farmer about how they make a decision, because it was about the future pathway. It was not about the status quo. you know this is why, if you are saying right now this, okay, maybe right now we are not seeing too much, but maybe because our scale, it was for 2050, and this is what we are saying, okay, that trend, it will be maybe led to the change in the near future. And
Mm,
right now we will see, okay, most of the people right now, they like a land, they give their land to like a solar farm and other stuff, and they're trying to come up with a new method to diversify even their farm. And this is why what I'm saying, maybe we are not seeing so far too much, but if that trend continue based on the situation we have, and if we are not like a prioritize the sustainability policy, and we will see that kind of change in the near future. As I said,
mhm.
our research about the futures and water, food, like a water, food, energy futures that we kind of trying to map here for Great Lake.
Yeah.
As I said, this is why the change maybe sometimes is so slow. Maybe in the future it will be more, but that's what our stakeholder told us, and that's what we found in when we look at the global scenario.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, certainly the last year has brought an extra, I guess, experimental opportunity to trade impacts. So yeah, super interesting. Thank you.
Thank you for question.
I was curious to ask you, during like the participatory research modeling, what are stakeholders kind of drawing from throughout that process? Are they drawing from just their own expertise in their own respective areas and subjects? past research, past studies, etc.?
We had we had a different type of a stakeholder. We had teacher in our team. We had some people in private sector, particularly working on water management in the Great Lake. And we had, as I said, from private sector, and also we had lots of people in the governmental sector. And actually, they provide a lot of great insight for our work. And as sometimes they mention, okay, at that model you had and that kind of factor you consider, it is not working in the Great Lake. This is one part of attention we had, part of the conversation we had. It's about what kind of factor we should consider for Great Lake region. Particularly we came up for water quality, because the water quality was one of issue related to another factor like land use. And this is why choosing which kind of indicator they should consider for water qualities was another study. We got that idea from our stakeholder. This is why, as I said, it was a kind of iterative process. And we had I think 2 weeks, each 2 weeks with our research team, we had a conversation about that. And then we try to kind of record all of them and share with the other stakeholder. And each 3 months also, we had a meeting again with them, and they shared the result of our modeling with them. This is, as I said, we had a lot of back and forth about, okay, what we should consider, in what kind of direction with the change we should consider. But this was a really informative process, and we learned a lot from the people with a different perspective.
Yeah. Thank you.
I hope I answered your question.
Yes. Thank you.
What other questions are out there?
Yeah.
We have
any question?
Have time for more.
Yeah.
I'll ask a question, and this may be, first of all, it's really good to see you here, Hadi. Thank you.
Thank you.
This may be beyond the scope, but just something that came to mind, and so I guess less of a scientific inquiry than just what you may personally think, but do you think that there are, or are there countries, nations we could look to as examples where they are able to perhaps turn inward and do a better job on sustainability efforts when deglobalization is occurring? Do you think that the United States is kind of an outlier, and looking at our situation is, I guess the short question is, are there other nations or countries that do it, that respond differently, or that you've seen respond differently, where we could kind of look to for some potential hope? And let me know if that question makes sense, maybe.
It makes sense, because if you just search with this topic, particularly SSP, a lot of countries, a lot of places like Brazil, and also like India, and I saw some in Europe, they have this kind of, they're trying to downscaling that kind of change in the region and see how they just unfold, not specifically about the trade, but about the sustainability prioritized. Because we have right now, if you look at, we had in the Brazil in the same situation, the administration there, they didn't want to be going to the sustainability. And this is why, if you look at the literature, you can see some research about the Brazil. And fortunately, at that place, you'll see, particularly about Amazon, you see we have a more restoration. And it seems even with that kind of trade, since people, they are, because it's about when people, they are kind of depend on the nature, and they need inherently looking at the sustainability, not just trade, because if they want to, because even they should produce something for company, right? And right now we see in lots of company like Nestle or maybe Unilever and others, they're looking for sustainability in their supply chain. This is why they have a big contract with them. And that kind of force from the trade, even they enforce that kind of community to go for sustainability. It means it is not anymore kind of just government support. Even it's like an international support for this kind of going in that way. But I think we can see more this kind of stuff, because a lot of places we have this kind of fragmentation. We have this kind of the trade in place, and yeah, maybe. But as I know, there is a lot of literature recently. They want to downscale that SSV for the region, and the trade mostly it's one of them. They try to just model it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any final questions? Seems like not any. So I'm going to take this opportunity to thank you for your presentation,
Thank you for having me.
being here with us today.